Hey everybody, this is Wes. This will be my fourth Notes on a Landscape series painting. This is on a canvas 16 by 20 inches. Well, it started off with a canvas that I used as a paint palette, or rather a place to wipe off my brush. So it gives me interesting texture and tones and colors to work with instead of just the stark white of the canvas. So I started in with the horizon line, and now I'm kind of adding in where these cypress trees are in the image. It's usually a good idea to put the horizon line not directly in the center of your canvas, but offset it either above or below, about a third of the way or 3/4 of the way down the canvas. Not a hard and fast rule, but it helps with the design if it is like that. It's just a little more natural for the eye. Kind of adding in these darker spots where the lily pads are. At the same time, I'm thinking, how am I going to render these eventually? So I'm kind of experimenting with the green that I'm seeing on the reference photo. And of course, at the moment, it looks nothing like lily pads, but the idea is just to find what shape they're making on the canvas and start with that. Adding in the darker shadow areas on these trees now. It's especially true with shadows and reflections, these sorts of behaviors of light. You should make sure to reference what you're seeing in the photo or in real life, rather than what you assume it's like. You're tempted to go off the idea in your brain that you know what the thing looks like, but usually that's not the case. Usually you're using a shortcut, a heuristic of what the thing is, rather than the actual color or the actual shape of the thing. So always refer back to the reference photo whenever you can. Not to get not that you're going for realism necessarily, but even in abstract painting, you want the abstraction to be intended. You don't want to cause an abstraction just from not paying attention. That's probably the main difference in my mind between good and bad abstract painting, is the intention of the artist and what they've achieved in regard to that intention. And then, of course, the design of the overall painting and these sorts of things. There's a lot of gray in the reference photo from the Spanish moss hanging in the trees and whatnot, so I'm kind of adding that back in. As you can see, I'm spending a lot of time on the foreground objects, the trees and the horizon and the lily pads, and I haven't yet touched the sky or the water. This is because the sky and the water are all in the background and they don't have as much detail in them, so I'm kind of focusing on the things that give the painting the detail, and then coming back in with the water and the sky almost as a secondary corrective measure, because you'll see me kind of dodge around the foliage and the lily pads, and it kind of redefines the edges a bit more. There's nothing wrong with starting with the background. In fact, sometimes I'm sure I do. But that was the thinking behind it this time, was might as well start with the foreground and get a bit of the details going there, and then refining with the background in the next step. Part of me really wanted to keep some of that background, especially that pink in the sky. That's kind of unique, and it kind of balances well with the pink that's still present in the lily pad area. But I wanted it a little more realistic than that, so I do cover that up in a minute here. More of that reflected darker blue. Starting with the light, nearly white clouds there, and then I'll move towards refining that shade of blue as I go. I think it can be real helpful to be very decisive when you're painting. I think it's the same with drawing, or in probably most arts. You kind of want to make a decision and go with it. You could figure out if it works or not afterwards. But in the moment, it's better to put in that sky with thick paint, let it stand on its own, and then reassess. I'll sped up the video a little bit. Most of the important stuff happens at the very beginning when you're first laying down the design of the painting. The main, largest cypress tree I put, I think, in the perfect spot. It's just off center. It goes above the horizon line, of course. And I would actually, if that was the only tree breaking the horizon line, I would probably move it a little further to the right. But I do have that secondary tree, and that kind of pulls the center of interest to the point between those two trees. And that point, that 2/3 of the way across and 1/3 down, is a nice spot, a pleasing spot to the eye for whatever psychological reasons, but that tends to work out that way. Adding in a bit of the variation in the water, lighter tones up near the top. Redefining where the trunk of that tree is and where the horizon line goes. I notice the top of the cloud creates this highlight in the water here, so I'm adding that back in. Not back in, I'm adding it in for the first time. And then I'm highlighting where that cloud is in the sky now. And then darkening the sky behind it, again matching what it is in the photo as best I can. So this treatment of the lily pads as abstract circles is something I've done before. In this one, I'm not sure it totally works. I think it makes it look a bit busy, especially once I start adding the words on over the top. But it's not the worst thing in the world. I can live with it. As with a couple of the other words on a landscape paintings I've done, I wasn't sure if it was working at all, even after I got most all of the words on the canvas. It was only after going back over the words with transparent washes and fading some away and letting others remain that I kind of was able to reconcile, my reservations. Bit of the transparent wash coming on now, and actually I went on darker than I intended at first, and so I'm just kind of adjusting as I go, and I'm letting some of these drips happen because who knows, it may work out and look pretty cool that way, although I end up wiping away a lot of them or painting back over them to get rid of the drips, because like I said, the main goal with doing that is just to tone down the brightness of the text. And I think that's about all I've got for you for this one. This one's called Notes on a Landscape, Cypress. Thanks for watching, everybody. Click like, add a comment, let me know what kind of paintings you'd like to see in the future, and I'll take that into consideration. Thanks.